What a day for the Buckeyes. 38-14. Ohio State beats Penn State in a game that I think for the last several months, Ohio State fans were looking forward to this game like crazy. And then over the last few weeks, maybe the air got let out of the balloon a little bit. Certainly not quite the same juice in this stadium and in the tailgate lots before the game today, despite what Ryan Day nicely said in the press conference. I don't think there was quite the same juice.
It was okay. So before we get, there's a lot of positive coming, but I will say this: when I was driving down, I had very similar thoughts. You and I shared this pregame, but like I was just envisioning, man, this game had so much in it, like so much juice. Like I was thinking about this game being 1 versus 2, or maybe 1 versus 4 or 5. And you're coming down to a 3-4 Penn State team, and you're just like, and you could really feel that when you got into town, like no juice, no buzz, getting into town. You're like, okay, we're not playing OU, but it feels like we're playing OU a little bit.
Well, I mean, even driving down High Street, it just didn't have quite the same level of fun and intensity. I don't know. Maybe it's the day after Halloween. College kids were still sleeping in,
had headaches.
Rolling in. There's a lot of ways to think about it. Regardless, the football was largely good from Ohio State. I think if you looked at this schedule preseason, you basically said, okay, there's 3 legitimate tests. Texas, you certainly passed. Penn State, and then obviously the rivalry game with Michigan. Penn State is having a terrible stretch of football right now. They weren't going to be nearly as good without Drew Aller playing quarterback. And I thought Ohio State did what it was supposed to do. This game was a little bit more of a game for a little longer than they would have liked. But 38-14 is certainly a decisive win, covered the spread. You never really had the outcome in question. It just took a little bit of time before there was some separation.
That's the point I wanted to talk about, because at halftime it's 17-14. It's a 3-point game, and it felt like, man, Ohio State's winning this big, right? And then you look at the scoreboard and you're like, no, they're not. I mean, that fumble obviously changes a lot of things. And really that whole sequence, you talk about like big plays in games. And I encourage you guys to go listen to what Ryan Day had to say afterwards, because he did talk about there's a handful of plays that change a game. Sometimes they come in the last minute of a game. Sometimes they come in the second quarter. Sometimes they come in the third quarter. You never know where they're going to be. But that sequence right there, Ohio State was up 17-7, and they were getting the ball out of halftime. So there was a real world where Ohio State goes down, scores a touchdown, and then goes to halftime, gets the ball again, and scores another touchdown, and it's 31-7, as opposed to fumbling on the first play, getting it returned to the 15-yard line, and then Penn State punching it in on a nice sequence of plays, and it being 17-14 at half. And, that was something that I think is really good for Ohio State to experience this week, a little bit of adversity, and the understanding Ryan Day couldn't get off the fumble. Like, he spoke for 25 minutes and, like, couldn't get it out of his mind as a true head coach.
To the point where he was, like, laughing at himself
about
he's like,
it. I promise I'll say something else not about the fumble, but he's like, it's a good point. It's something really good for our team to understand. Like, fumbling the football could end your season, right? Yeah. That could end your season in a different game, and it's a good lesson to be learned.
Listen, I think Penn State was the unanimous Big Ten favorite coming into the year. Don't think Ohio State didn't take that to heart. There was plenty of returning talent, and there were plenty of question marks on the outside, but it's obvious that they weren't question marks inside the Woody. You look at someone like Julian Sayin, where I think rightfully everybody said, hey, listen, like, we got to see what this kid's made of, right? Well, he looks like legitimately the best player in college football, not named Jeremiah Smith, who he throws to. He is a legitimate Heisman candidate. Some odds makers right now have him as the favorite. I mean, he was 20 of 23 today for 316 yards, 4 touchdowns. Obviously, Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate are incredible over the top, take the top off the defense threats. Both of them had 57-yard catches. They combined to go 11 catches for 247 yards and 3 touchdowns. I mean, that's crazy.
More touchdowns than incompletions.
Yeah.
More touchdowns than that doesn't even register in my brain. Like, that doesn't make sense. He had 3 more touchdowns today than incompletions, and it was everything, right? It was throws over the middle. It was the couple deep shots he took to Carnell and Jeremiah. And I will say, it's got to be so much fun throwing to those two. Like, sure. Always open and go and make big catches, which is so fun. The clip that's going to stick with me from this one is after the Carnell touchdown, there was a close-up of Julian, and he there was a flick of the wrist, and then he just literally, before the ball was caught, started jogging. Like, he knew. Like, yep, it's up there. Carnell's got it. Like, literally, it was the perfect description of, like, the meme that's like Jamar's down there somewhere or Justin's down there. Carnell's down there. I got it. We're good. It's strike up the band. We're on, because I mean, he was surgical today. Again, I mean, we say it every week. He's the most accurate passer in college football, and the best thing he does is he makes the right decision each and every play, and that's what stands out as a freshman playing, or as a redshirt freshman playing on this field.
And listen, there's plenty of hyperbole and hype and all that stuff when you say things like he's the most accurate passer in college football, he's the best player in football. Like, some of that stuff can be opinionated. Statistically, he is the most accurate passer in the country. And what's amazing to me is that his deep ball accuracy is just as good as what he's doing in the short and intermediate game. That is such a rare trait, especially from a guy who hasn't played a ton of football.
He hasn't played a lot of football, and he's come out in each and every – I mean, he was 80% completion before today, and I'm not a math guy, but I think 20 out of 23 is more than 80%. So somebody help me out with that exact number, but his completion percentage went up. Like, that's unbelievable when you talk about a young player like that, and he's just so like, even – you know, we've laughed about it a little bit off air, a little bit on air. You know, just seeing his growth, even just talking to us, has been so, like, he's so much more confident in his skin now that we're in week 10, and he knows that, hey, I'm a guy. Like, I can do this. He's not cocky 1 ounce, not a little bit. But he had even cracked a couple jokes today in the media session. You're like, oh yeah, this guy's feeling it. He's starting to understand. Hey, I'm the quarterback at Ohio State, and I'm playing really, really good football, and we got this team in a really good position.
You know, this is not the negative Nancy offensive show. So I'll just acknowledge that I think right guard is still something of a problem. I don't know that that's going to prevent Ohio State from winning a national championship. Maybe it does. It's probably the one thing offensively that's it's not a glaring hole, but it's not consistent enough at the same level of excellence you're seeing elsewhere. What I admired about this game, you know, Ohio State fans sit there and say, okay, like, are we learning from things? Are we building on some of the mistakes of the past? You think about the Michigan game last year and you banging your head on a wall. Why is Ryan Day continuing to call plays you're running the ball straight into the line of scrimmage, right? I bring that up because I feel that Ryan is actually looking at what he's got a little differently this year and saying, okay, we've got something of a liability at right guard. Let's figure out a way to still make this an effective offense around that. He's not, you know, he's not calling things that are terrible.
And I would even more so to that point, you go in at halftime, it's a 3-point game, and they were, like, I talked about it pregame, I talked about it a lot all week long, like, this is a good opportunity to establish the run. You know, more so on that point, you know, you rushed 32 times for 164, it's 5 yards a pop, but you have the outliers, a 51-yard run that happened in the last minute or the last quarter of the game.
This team's not running the ball.
They're not running it well, and what's really good about that is that they were trying to do it early on, went into halftime, and Ryan even said, we're up 3. It felt like we were down 21. And they came out, and what did they do on the first drive? They came out, pass, 54 yards down the field, and it's set up 1st and goal. Like, oh, yeah, that's the growth you're talking about of making those right adjustments.
I don't want to ask you a question that you don't know the answer to, so try to speculate a little bit.
Sure.
Why did Jim Knowles want to play so much man?
Yeah. It's a good question. It's one of those things when early on in the game, in my opinion, and without being able to go and watch the tape or anything quite yet, early on in the game, it felt like they weren't getting pressure, and Julian was able to sit back there and just wait till Carnell got to the open window, or wait till Jeremiah found the open window, or the tight ends had a great game today too. Like, he was able to just sit back there and kind of dice them up. The very least, if you're in man coverage, you can add a couple guys to rush. That would be the only thing, because, you know, there's nobody out there. There's no team. There's no receivers. There's no corners that can run with those two. And you're like, hey, if we can just get to the quarterback and maybe get a strip sack or maybe extend a drive, maybe that was it. But, you know, that was live and die by that one. I mean, ask Al Golden that if he wants to take back the man coverage too.
You know, obviously there's so many storylines that didn't have to necessarily do with what happened between the lines here today coming into this game. All the noise around Brian Hartline. I think Ohio State kind of played into it late in the game, where during a TV timeout, they put the camera on Jim Knowles and the whole place boos.
Did they? I was in the room.
They put him on. You bet. They put him on. They booed. Then they put Matt Patricia on. The place went nuts. They cut back to Knowles. It was boo, and then a cheer, and then a boo and a cheer, and obviously having fun with it. You know, listen, there's frostiness with how that situation ended. I'm not mad at Jim Knowles for leaving. Like, was it weird the way that whole thing ended? Yeah, but I mean, if you're an Ohio State fan, don't you sit here and feel like, hey, you helped us win a national championship. And by the way, maybe we upgraded.
Yeah, not maybe, no, not a maybe an upgrade. Like it is. I thought it was interesting. We talked about this, and I said it in the pregame. Ryan's very calculated with what he says, and during the week, he did acknowledge, like, yeah, sometimes when these things happen, you stay close, and sometimes you don't. He goes, Jim and I haven't talked since he left, and you're like, okay, got it. Like, read between the lines there. There's no love lost. There's no. They didn't. I was kind of watching Jim when he was on the field pregame, talked to a couple guys. Ryan wasn't one of them, and guess what? That's fine. That's life. That's business. That's life. That's everything. And even Caleb Downs in the interview in there was like, somebody had asked him, like, did you go talk to coach? And he goes, I shook his hand, said hi, and then he's on the other sidelines. Like, that's it. Like, and these players, that's the one thing that stands out to me every week. It's just the maturity of these guys. Even that, for 18 to 21-year-olds to understand, like, oh, this guy left, and how do I deal with this? Like, you and I we're adults now. This happens every day. Yeah. They've not experienced that. And for them to handle it as well as they did, I think it, again, speaks volumes to them as players. Okay, other side of the ball. Ohio State has not been tested defensively a ton throughout the course of the season. They obviously gave up one somewhat methodical, long, and if you're a true fan, you're probably annoyed, drive in the first half. It was almost 8 minutes, 75 yards, and it just felt like, steady progress up the field by Penn State. That was frustrating. Outside of that, gifted Penn State 7 points. You pitched a shutout in the second half. Arbel Reese played like he was in 3 different spots at the same time on the field with 12 tackles, 2.5 TFLs. Kenyatta Jackson played great. Caden Curry played great. Sonny Styles, Caden McDonald was a monster again. Caleb Downs, thankfully, not really sure Ohio State needs him to beat Purdue next week. The good news is it was not targeting. He was just an unnecessary roughness foul, which he then made up for by intercepting the pass. Would you have called it? Because in there, again, I didn't see it. I was getting set up for post game. He said, I got it. That was a blessing. I plead the fifth. Okay, there we go. Understood. Yeah. The reality is I thought Ohio State got tested. I kind of liked the fact that at halftime this game was closer than they probably wanted it to be, because you're not going to cakewalk your way to a championship. You need some adversity. Listen, they're the better team every time they take the field, but you don't win titles on paper. You alluded to it. We are talking about 18 or 19-year-old guys, and no, I don't think there's a better team in the country than this group right now, but you still got to go prove it. And I wanted to see them play with some adversity at some point. And they got it today, right? Like that stretch, 15 plays, 75 yards for a touchdown. And like there's multiple levels to it. Like they know they were getting pushed down the field. You at home knew, like, this is weird. Everybody in the stadium knew this is weird, but Penn State found something, right? Yeah. And that's the one thing that stands out to me is that, what Penn State was doing, kind of, X's and O's talk for just a little bit. They were using formations, motions, and shifts, right? The difference between a motion and a shift would be like, hey, if the receiver's on the right side and I bring them to the left side, that would be a motion. A shift would be, hey, we're in trips right, and then the quarterback goes trips right shotgun, and he yells a code term shift, and then they go from trips to under center, backfield, guy in the backfield, and they switch strengths and do all that stuff. That is tough for a defense to respond to, because you got to communicate quickly, because that changes all responsibilities. That changes a lot of things. And it was one thing that stood out to me on this defense was that, hey, Penn State found something and they executed on it, right? And I would assume, right, when you see these games get a little bit later on and other teams start seeing that, you can't major in it like Penn State did, because they definitely did that, and they knew they were outmanned, so they had to do some weird stuff. But you're going to see teams use more shifts, more formations, more motions to try to get Ohio State to communicate and respond on the fly. I think that was something that stood out to me. There were a lot of unbalanced formations where you'd see, the center snapping the ball and nobody to his left. Sometimes they went right into the strength of the formation. Sometimes they went left, trying to create different matchups that they thought were advantageous. At the end of the day, you still have to have the guys to be able to execute it. And I do think Ohio State missed more tackles today than they would care to deal with. But ultimately, I thought the communication defensively was pretty good. And they got better throughout the game. Like, very first play, go back, found it on YouTube, watch the first play of the game. Yeah. Penn State comes out and unbalanced to the left. They got 2 receivers on the line. They had a tackle over. They run a pitch play, and Ohio State was just outmanned, right? Because guess what? They probably haven't seen that. Yeah. And they don't know, you're coming with the team. You're getting a team over there who's like, screw it. We're going to throw anything out there. And they were outmanned. They had a corner was the edge defender, and he got blown up by a tackle, and then boom, 26 yards. And then guess what? 3 straight runs, punt, right? And I was like, okay, good. And then that one long drive, they did it a lot. There was a lot of weird stuff in there, and then that was it. Penn State didn't cross the 50 when they started a normal drive the rest of the day. Yeah. Like that's the good stuff, and that's something you can lean back on and be like, oh yeah, we can adjust, we can face adversity and handle it well.
I think we're learning a lot about this Buckeye team. You don't need to be good at everything to win. You need to understand what you're good at and figure out how to use that to your best advantage. This team has some good running backs. They're not a good running team. Mm-hmm. They can run the ball at times. I think they're doing it enough to basically keep some level of balance. But the reality is with the way they are able to execute right now through the air, it almost doesn't matter. Defensively, Ohio State's defensive tackle group, a lot better than I thought they were going to be coming into the year. And like top end talent has been there, but their depth, the development of Taiwan Malone this year, to me, has taken a ton of pressure off of somebody like Edric Houston, who I really wanted to see a little bit more from this year. Caden McDonald, I mean, his quads are tree trunks.
Look like you, just like that. Looks like you look like his quad.
Plus 200 pounds of muscle. I mean, the kid's unbelievable. I think what has most impressed me about this Ohio State team is their ability to identify where are we really good and how can we not try to reinvent the wheel just to prove that we can do something different. Yeah. Because they're going to be more talented than most of the teams they play throughout the course of the year, especially until they get to a playoff. I feel like you talk about player IQ a lot. I feel like the coaching staff has done a better job this year of not trying to outsmart themselves.
Yeah, not trying to outsmart themselves. And then today proved that, hey, when stuff does go wrong, when a team puts a drive together, guess what? The other unit is the best in the country. Penn State goes on a drive to cut it 10-7. I mean, before you blinked, Ohio State touchdown. You're like, oh, you're good. And what that does is they believed after that touchdown drive, and then the offense reminded them, no, you're good. Good drive, nice, cute. We can still roll. Again, touchdown, right? They score again, come out of half, right down the field, and just immediately takes the hope away from them. And that's that complementary football that a lot of teams talk about. We haven't had to talk about it with this team yet until today when you got to see it. Like, oh, one side let it up a little bit, the other side picked them up and did it right away.
Yeah, I mean, just overall, this was a really good day. Penn State, I mean, it's easy to dunk on a team that's going through what they're going through. They're not a bad team. No. They're obviously in a tough spot. They've got a lot of players on that other side of the field that, I mean, legitimately will either play in the NFL or be in camp. There's a reason they were so highly thought of coming into the year. When you lose your starting quarterback and you lose your head coach, things can get a little bit wonky, but there aren't many teams that are going to be able to, like, man for man, actually have some legitimate matchups. Penn State's line, I thought, played okay today on both sides, actually.
And Julian was under a fair amount of pressure. Like, as I talked about earlier, there were some times when he could stand back there and it looked like they were playing Grambling State again, where he could sit back there and no pressure. There were also times where he had to stare down the face of some some pressure right in his face. Carnell Tate's touchdown, we already talked about it. There's a guy running right at him, right, and had a free runner. So always good to have Ohio State be tested. And I will say this too, like, I was impressed that they fought. Like Penn State, they came in, they very, very easily could have laid over when they went 3 and out, and then Ohio State went on a 80-yard drive or 89-yard, whatever it was, 89-yard touchdown drive, and Julian Sain was 7 for 7 for 71 yards. You're like, oh, this is how today's going to go. But they fought back and they gave Ohio State an honest effort today, which I thought was cool.
Yeah, I thought it was cool.
Yeah. And cool. It was funny. I looked down and I was like, oh, Penn State's like moving the ball on Ohio State. And then I looked at the stats and I was like, they had like 101 total yards. Really. We're just so unused. You know what? And I said this, lightning struck twice today. Penn State was perfect in goal to go scenarios. They scored. Nobody does that. They scored twice on Ohio State. Had to get a little gimmicky on the one. They had a really cool third. It was 3rd and 6 at the 9-yard line here, and they ran that sprint out shovel pass thing, and they set up perfectly to get him inside the 2-yard line or whatever. But not many people have scored on Ohio State's defense in the red area, and then Penn State did it twice. So.
I think it's worth pointing this out because everybody remembers highlight plays as, the fun parts of the game. But in terms of like game-changing plays, a couple of the sacks Ohio State had I thought were huge. But to me, one of the most defining plays of this game was Julian Sayin scrambling for a first down when the pocket did collapse, because you know that he's a capable runner. We just haven't had to see him do that in critical situations a ton. It's just another element to this offense that I think is going to make it really difficult to stop them.
Let's talk about the sequence too. It's 17-14. It's 3rd and 6. It's right about here, right? So it's Ohio State backed up. And not only did the pocket break down, it was 2 free runners. Like right at him, you're like, oh yeah, sack. And he just has this little sweet little juke move, gets through it, nothing left, right? Again, you were talking about man coverage, nothing left, no eyes on him, gets 9 yards. 2 or 3 plays later, 57 yards to Carnell Tate, sets it up in the red zone. 2 plays after that, touchdown to C.J. Donaldson. It's like, let's talk about the reverse of that. 17-14, sack on 3rd down, punt, and now Penn State's got the football. It's like, how does that change things? There's a handful of those game-changing plays. Sometimes they happen with a minute left to go. Sometimes they happen with 1 second left to go. Sometimes they happen in the 3rd quarter with 14 minutes left to go. There's a couple plays that'll change a football game. That was one of them, and that was a big, big-time play in this game.
What a day. 38-14, Ohio State dominates the Penn State Nittany Lions in pretty much every statistical category. And I thought Ohio State basically kept its focus throughout the course of this game. Even late when, it was clear Penn State wasn't going to win, but Ohio State didn't really let too many stupid things happen. I mean, there was one drive where Penn State started to move the ball. It ended in a takeaway. Staying locked in all the way through I thought was important. So, pass the test.
Pass the test. We have a good crowd in here today. So first of all, thanks for jumping in. And we got good crowd here. So thanks for jumping in. Encourage everybody to get over to Roundtable, Buckeyes Roundtable. Newer site. If you're new to the channel, awesome. If you're old to the channel, you hear me say it on every show. But get over to the site, follow me, follow Brendan. A lot of fun stuff, different than the typical content you may get. A lot of interaction. You have direct access to us too. You can tell me I'm dumb. You can tell me I need a haircut, or you can tell me that we say some good stuff. So get in there, let us know what you think, and follow along with all of our stuff.
Yeah, Roundtable just launched its network at this point almost 2 months ago. September 5th was when we officially launched. Roundtable.io. Just go in the menu in the top left-hand corner, and you can navigate to the Ohio State page. The Roundtable app is available in the App Store. It will open up to their Roundtable crypto channel, but it will soon default to Ohio State if you choose to download it through the Ohio State page. We're building what we think is a cool community. We've got lots of great premium content for you, and we do lots of this kind of stuff. Kevin Woike joins us quite a bit, the former Ohio State offensive lineman. So,
what do you think he's doing right now?
3 whiskeys deep.
Talking about, I don't know. I'm nervous about Purdue.
Yeah, sure. That's exactly what he's doing. So anyways, we'd certainly appreciate it if you'd support us that way. There's never any subscription. We don't charge anything for any of this coverage. Never will. That is not part of our business model at all. But we'd love if you jump over. All right, for Anthony Moeglin, I'm Brendan Gulick, 38-14. The final score today, Ohio State outlasts and outguns and outmans Penn State regularly throughout the game. A good win for the Buckeyes, who are back at it on the road. It's the Big Bad Boilermakers next week in West Lafayette. See you soon.